start with this fraction, 1 over 10. Well, you should recognize that it's one of our building blocks. And this should be easy to write down as a decimal number because we have a number place just for counting tenths. So all we have to do is put a 1 in the tenths place, like this, 0.1. Now when you write decimal numbers, it's important that you always include the ones place. But since we don't have any ones, we just put a 0 in that spot. The 0 makes the decimal point easier to see. Alright, so that's 1/10. But what if we have 2 over 10 instead? Well, all we have to do is change the digit in the tenths place to a 2. So 2 over 10 equals 0.2. In fact, we can keep counting tenths like this. 3 tenths, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and finally 10 tenths. But look what happened when we got to 10 tenths. Now we don't have a digit for 10, so we had to use the next number place over, the ones place. But that makes sense, because if you have the fraction 10 over 10, that makes a whole, and the value is just 1. Of course, we don't really need the 0 in the tenths place to write 1, but as long as the decimal point's there, at least we won't confuse it with 10. Alright, tenths are pretty easy, but what about hundredths? Let's start with the hundredths building block, 1 over 100. To write that as a decimal, we simply put a 1 in the hundredths place. We also need to put a 0 in the tenths place to act as a placeholder and show that we have no tenths. And we still need to put a 0 in the ones place as usual. Next, let's try 2 hundredths. For that, we simply put a 2 in the hundredths place. Let's keep on counting with hundredths, just like we did for tenths. 3 hundredths, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 hundredths. But look what happened when we got to 10 hundredths. Just like before, we have to use the next number place to the left, the tenths place. This happens because any time you have 10 of a building block, they combine to form one of the next biggest building block. For example, 10 hundredths is a tenth, 10 tenths is a 1, 10 ones is a 10, and 10 tens is 100. Now the next fraction after 10 over 100 is 11 over 100. Now if you think about it, you'll see that 11 hundredths is really just a combination of 10 hundredths and 100. Knowing that will help us write it as a decimal. Because a group of 10 hundredths is equal to 1/10, we put a 1 in the tenths place. And we still have that 1/100th left over, so we put a 1 in the hundredths place. There, 11 over 100 is just 0.11 as a decimal. Fortunately, you don't have to break up the fraction into tenths and hundredths each time. Anytime you have a 2-digit number over 100, all you have to do is put those digits into the tenths and hundredths place of your decimal number. Let's look at a few more examples to help you see the pattern. 24 over 100 would be 0.24. 32 over 100 would be 0.32. 78 over 100 would be 0.78. And 99 over 100 would be 0.